George? Okay, George Baker.
I just wanted to thank everyone for coming and sort of overwhelming statement of support of everyone being actually in this space in the museum on this day. When I was invited to give a short gallery walkthrough of Philip Kaiser's exhibition here at the Geffen, this seemed like I was very happy to be invited. It seemed not like it would be a quite extraordinary event in any way, but actually, seemingly history has gotten in the way and a certain number of coincidences have occurred. Two things happened right away this week as the sort of severity of the crisis, the financial crisis at MOCA became clear. One of which would, of course, be for myself preparing some remarks about a show drawn from the permanent collection, how extraordinarily fraught those remarks would be at a moment when all kinds of questions are being raised about the future of the museum that cares for these objects and cares for this art. And second was the fact that really could only happen in a context like the show that's up right here, in this place, and at this time, with the community of people, many of whom are here in this room, which has to do with the fact that almost immediately on Wednesday and Thursday, I began to be contacted by artists who are actually in the show, artists like Cindy Bernard and Diana Thader, wondering about the possibilities as my discussion and sort of docent tour was meant to happen today on Sunday. Would it be possible to talk about this? And I of course thought it would be impossible not to. So that's in some sense the coincidences that seemingly have brought us here. I just wanted to make some very short remarks. It's probably not going to be possible, I've been told, and it seems in a certain sense logical, to do what I was intending, which was a docent tour of the exhibition, unless enough of you have shown your support and feel like there's no reason you would want to listen to me speak any further about the exhibition. I encourage you to feel that way and to leave. At the most, I could do a docent tour with about 50 people, and I'd be happy to do so. There's another option, which would be also to potentially reschedule the event for another day. But since I was meant to give a docent tour about a show that's coming from the permanent collection, I just wanted to say three very short things about this permanent collection. Since I am an historian of art, and the remarks I want to make are in a sense facing sort of historical issues. I mean, that's what I do. So I just wanted to make one remark, one thing I thought of doing before the artists in the show began to approach me about having a public discussion. I thought one instructive tour to take of the show that Philip Kaiser has created here today would actually be, and maybe many of you do this anyway, as a matter of course, I usually try to do it myself, to take a tour of this exhibition and just look at the labels for all of the artworks on the walls. This is a show of conceptual art in California, so you're spending your time looking at a lot of text in many of the pieces anyway. And there's a lot of other textual pieces, and they are these wall labels, where one of the stories that the wall labels tell, there are several, but the one that I find the most touching, of course, and the one that I find potentially the most important for this moment in the history of MOCA, is how many of the works of art on the walls of this show and in the permanent collection of this museum have been given by the artists. Some of you are in the room, given by artists to the museum. Often in memory of other artists who are not with us today in this room. And so that is an incredibly important sort of fact to register as we stand here. And it speaks to the fact that I'm a relative newcomer to Los Angeles. One of the reasons I'm here is an institution like MOCA seemingly creating the kind of intensity that one wants in one's work as a historian around oneself. That's one reason why I came to Los Angeles 5 years ago, this institution, and its program, and its collection. But it's an artist collection in some way, and it's an artist museum in some way. So I wanted to make a couple of remarks about the history of museums that are in a certain sense founded in close cooperation with and in dialogue with the community of artists locally set around them. That is a situation we face here. I mean, you could say that at the moment of modernism earlier in the 20th century, that was in some sense the situation for a museum like MoMA, which it no longer is the situation for a museum like MoMA. Living in New York as I did in the 80s and the 90s, it was quite clear that I was literally late to the scene in some way, and that museum, while it will always be somewhat, one of the most important places in my life as an art historian, it was no longer in a kind of living connection with the production of contemporary art, of course, or with the community of artists that museums, in some sense, exist to both express and to allow certain dialogues of artists to occur. That role, I think, in American culture, not just in the local culture of Los Angeles, and potentially that role globally, has been one that I think it would be an obvious statement to make that the museum here, MOCA, has stepped into. And it is with that kind of stakes on the table that one does not want to see this museum institution changed, transformed, utterly compromised in any serious way by the serious financial issues that are facing it. It's an artist museum, and we don't want to see this moment, in some sense, and this context, and this community shrivel and die. So there's one thing that I wanted to remember. One other thing that seems crucial to remember, historically speaking, in Los Angeles, is how, in some sense, you could talk about the history of something like the artist's involvement in the creation of institutional spaces, something like maybe the history of the alternative space movement in New York in the 1970s. But it seems to be crucial to something like the genetic makeup of Los Angeles at this time and over the last several decades, that the involvement of the artistic community in the creation of institutions, this is something that sets Los Angeles apart in the contemporary arena. You wouldn't say the same thing, I think, and maybe I'll get yelled at for saying this, of a center like London in the last decade. Lace in Hollywood, the Santa Monica Museum of Art, MOCA here in downtown Los Angeles. This is a unique historical situation that needs to be both preserved in the immediate run, but also treasured and made public. And people need to talk about this as much as possible. And I just have one last memory to share, but I'm not the right person to speak about this historical memory, and that is the fact that the situation we face with MOCA today also has a kind of local and historical precedent, and that's what happened in the 1970s with the Pasadena Art Museum. I am not the right person to speak about this. I think we will speak about this a little bit today, but I just want us to all, as much as we can, think about that historical lesson. Hopefully it was a lesson. Hopefully the great statement of our friend Karl Marx will not be the statement that comes to weigh upon us in this historical moment with MOCA, that history is repeated the first time as tragedy, the second time as farce. There are a lot of parallels to be drawn, it seems to me, between what happened with the Pasadena Museum and Norton Simon and with the current situation at MOCA today. And a lot of those lessons are lessons that we need to talk about publicly, but also hopefully steer clear of and avoid. So that's all I wanted to say, and hopefully we will have a chance, some of us, to talk about this incredible exhibition and the works